Ever wondered which states to avoid when starting a homestead? Well, partner, you're in the right place. Homesteading, you see, is more than just a fancy word for living off the grid. It's a lifestyle choice that involves self-sufficiency, producing your own food, and often creating your own power. But not every patch of land in this great country of ours is created equal. Some states, due to their laws and regulations, climate and weather, or cost of living, can turn the dream of homesteading into a real pickle. Now, don't get me wrong, every state has its charm. But if you're setting out to live the homesteader life, there are a few places you might want to think twice about. So saddle up as we embark on this journey across the United States to uncover the top 5 states you might want to steer clear of. First up on our list, we're heading out to the Pacific, to the beautiful islands of Hawaii. Now, Hawaii is a place that can easily deceive you with its paradise-like charm. But don't let those swaying palm trees and endless beaches fool you. When it comes to homesteading, Hawaii can be a tough nut to crack. Let's start with the cost of living. It's no secret that Hawaii is one of the priciest states in the US. Everything from groceries to gas can cost an arm and a leg, or maybe even 2 of each if you're not careful. And if you're thinking about buying land to start your homestead, well, you might need to dig up that buried treasure chest you've been saving for a rainy day. Then there are the building codes and regulations. Hawaii is strict, folks. We're talking about permits for everything from your main house to your chicken coop. And don't even get me started on the red tape involved in going off-grid with solar power or rainwater catchment systems. It's a labyrinth of bureaucracy that can make even the toughest cowboy hang up his hat. And let's not forget about the isolation. Hawaii's out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, miles and miles away from the mainland. That means getting supplies can be a real chore. You can't just hop in your truck and drive down to the local hardware store if you need a new hammer or some nails. Everything has to be shipped in, which adds to the cost and the wait time. But hey, if you're a millionaire with money to burn, or a surfer who can't bear to be away from the waves, then maybe, just maybe, Hawaii could work for you. But for the average Joe looking to live off the land, well, Hawaii might just be a tropical mirage. So, unless you're a millionaire or a surfer who can't live without the waves, Hawaii might not be your best bet for homesteading. Next up, we're heading to the Garden State, New Jersey. Now, don't get me wrong, folks, New Jersey has its charm. It's got the Jersey Shore, Atlantic City, and some of the best diners around. But if you're looking to plant your roots and start a homestead, well, you might just want to keep on looking. Let's talk about property taxes. In New Jersey, they're as high as a horse on stilts. The state has the highest property taxes in the entire country. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd rather spend my hard-earned cash on seeds and livestock, not on a tax bill that's thicker than my grandma's cookbook. Next, let's mosey on over to zoning laws. New Jersey's zoning laws are more complicated than a knot in a lasso. They're strict, and they're not particularly friendly to homesteaders. Want to raise chickens? Better check the regulations. Thinking about a wind turbine for power? You'll need to navigate a maze of red tape. It's like trying to ride a bull that just doesn't want to be ridden. And let's not forget about population density. New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the Union. Now, that might be just fine if you're a city slicker, but for us homesteaders, it's about as appealing as a skunk at a garden party. Finding a spacious piece of land that's suitable for homesteading can be tougher than finding a needle in a haystack. So, there you have it. High taxes, strict zoning laws, and more neighbors than you can shake a stick at. It's enough to make a cowboy hang up his hat. But remember, every cloud has a silver lining. If you're a gambling man, you might just hit the jackpot and find your perfect homestead in New Jersey. But let's just say, I wouldn't bet the ranch on it. So unless you're a fan of paying high taxes and living elbow to elbow with your neighbors, New Jersey might not be the ideal place to start your homestead. Now, let's head up north to the last frontier, Alaska. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about Alaska, I think about ice, snow, and a whole lot of solitude. But let's dig deeper, shall we? Alaska's climate is as unpredictable as a bull in a china shop. It's got some of the harshest and longest winters this side of the North Pole. We're talking about temperatures that plunge way below freezing, and days where the sun barely peeks over the horizon. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd much rather take a dip in a warm creek than chip ice off my beard. But it ain't just the cold that makes Alaska a tough spot for homesteading, it's also the isolation. Alaska's vast and wild, which sounds romantic until you realize that means your nearest neighbor might be 100 miles away. If you need a doctor or a gallon of milk, you're in for a long haul. And forget about popping over to the hardware store if your wood stove breaks down in the middle of January. Speaking of wood stoves, Have you thought about the cost of heating in Alaska? It's not like you can just throw open the windows and let in a warm summer breeze. You're going to need a lot of fuel to keep your home toasty, and that stuff ain't cheap. Add in the cost of getting supplies flown or shipped in, and you're looking at a pretty hefty price tag just to keep the home fires burning. And let's not forget about the wildlife. I mean, sure, bears and moose are beautiful creatures, but they can also be a real nuisance when you're trying to grow your own food or keep livestock. They're not exactly known for their respective property lines. So unless you're a polar bear or a fan of living in sub-zero temperatures for half the year, you might want to think twice about homesteading in Alaska. Next, we're heading to the sunny shores of California. Now, don't get me wrong, California is a beautiful state, with its picturesque landscapes and alluring coastlines. But as a homesteader, it's like trying to plant a cactus in the ocean. It just doesn't work. Let's begin with the elephant in the room, the cost of living. California is known for its high price tags, from real estate to groceries. In fact, it's one of the most expensive states to live in the country. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't pay for a plot of land with sunshine and good vibes. Then there's the water scarcity. California is no stranger to droughts. The state's water resources are stretched thin, leading to strict regulations on water usage. Imagine trying to keep your crops alive while juggling water restrictions. It's like trying to wash an elephant with a thimble of water. And speaking of regulations, let's not forget about the environmental ones. California is known for its stringent environmental laws. I mean, it's great for Mother Earth, but can be a real thorn in the side for homesteaders. For instance, certain types of livestock may be prohibited, and strict building codes can make constructing a homestead more challenging than putting a square peg in a round hole. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to homestead in California. I've seen some folks do it, and they're as happy as a clam at high tide. But it takes a lot of resources, patience, and a good deal of navigating through the red tape. So, unless you're a movie star or a tech billionaire, California might not be the best place for your homestead. But hey, if you've got a hankering for sunshine and don't mind a challenge, then by all means, give it a whirl. Just remember, even the wildest stallions have to be tamed eventually. Last but not least, we're heading to the Sunshine State, Florida. Now, don't let the name fool you. Sure, there's plenty of sunshine, but it comes with a side of high humidity and heat that can make a grown man sweat just thinking about it. It's like living in a sauna 24/7, and not the relaxing kind. And while we're on the subject of heat, let's talk about Florida's famous hurricanes. Every year, like clockwork, the hurricane season rolls around from June to November. These storms can be unpredictable and devastating, causing significant damage to property, infrastructure, and agriculture. Now, as a homesteader, can you imagine trying to rebuild your chicken coop or replant your vegetable garden every year after a hurricane? It's like playing a game of Russian roulette with Mother Nature, and she doesn't play fair. Some folks might argue that Florida's warm climate is great for growing a variety of crops all year round. Well, that's true, but only if you can get past the pests and diseases that thrive in such conditions. It's a constant battle, I tell you, against bugs, fungi, and other critters that have a taste for your hard-earned harvest. But it's not just the weather and the pests you have to worry about in Florida. The state is also known for its high population density in many areas. Cities like Miami, Orlando, and Jacksonville are bustling metropolises teeming with people. And that means higher property prices, more competition for resources, and less peace and quiet for you and your homestead. Plus, let's not forget about the alligators that might decide to take a dip in your pond or munch on your livestock. So, unless you're a retired snowbird or a fan of alligators, Florida might not be the ideal place for your homestead. It's a beautiful state, don't get me wrong, but as far as homesteading goes, it's a tough nut to crack. Better to look elsewhere, where the climate, the laws, and the cost of living won't give you as many headaches. Well, folks, that wraps up our list of the top 5 states to avoid when starting a homestead. Let's jog our memory a bit, shall we? We kicked off the list with Hawaii. It may be paradise for vacationers, but for homesteaders, it's a different story. With sky-high cost of living and strict agriculture laws, it's like trying to grow a pineapple in a snowstorm. Next up was New Jersey, where the high population density makes it feel like you're trying to carve out a homestead in a bustling city square. Not to mention those property taxes could make a grown man cry. Alaska was third on our list. Unless you're a polar bear or a fan of living in an icebox, the freezing temperatures and short growing seasons are enough to freeze your homesteading dreams right in their tracks. California came in fourth. Now, don't get me wrong, California's got its allure. but with wildfires, droughts, and cost of living that's higher than a kite. It's a tough row to hoe for a homesteader. Last but not least, we had Florida. Between hurricanes, humidity, and alligators in your backyard, it's enough to make a cowboy hang up his hat. Now, don't let this list discourage you. Remember, every homesteader's journey is unique. What works for one might not work for another. This list is not the end-all and be-all, but just a guide to help you avoid some potential pitfalls. It's essential to do your own research. Consider your personal circumstances and determine what's important to you when choosing a location for your homestead. Maybe you thrive in the cold, or perhaps you don't mind wrestling an alligator from time to time. Remember, every state has its pros and cons, so choose wisely. And as my pappy used to say, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. So don't lose hope. Keep searching, keep learning, and keep growing. Happy homesteading, y'all.